Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're taking a pretty fascinating journey today straight into the heart of government accountability. Have you ever stopped to wonder exactly how a nation protects its taxpayer funds? How it stops waste, inefficiency, or, let's be real, outright corruption? Well, today we're cracking open the official rulebook for Nigeria's public sector assurance.
It really boils down to the ultimate high-stakes question: who watches the government's wallet? Because when billions are being allocated, dispersed, and spent, you absolutely cannot just rely on the honor system. So today, we're going to meet the official guardians, the watchdogs tasked with securing that public purse. And honestly, the mechanisms they use, they're pretty ingenious once you see how they all fit together.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, guarding the public purse. Second, the first line, internal audit. Third, the ultimate detective, the Auditor General. Fourth, the tribunal, the Public Accounts Committee. And finally, number 5, the gatekeepers, public procurement.
Section 1. Guarding the public purse.
Setting up strict bureaucratic accountability. Well, it isn't just about creating red tape, right? It is absolutely vital for a functioning government. Without it, public projects just fail, and public funds, they simply disappear. So the crucial starting point here is understanding what public sector assurance actually means. Basically, it's the full set of mechanisms that ensure funds are managed legally, efficiently, and effectively. This assurance isn't just a bunch of accountants balancing books in some dusty back room. It's a living, breathing system designed to make sure you, the public, actually get the schools, the roads, and the services that you paid for.
Section 2. The first line, internal audit. Let's start by meeting the watchdogs positioned directly inside every single government ministry and agency. You can kind of think of the internal auditor as the security guard standing right at the front door. They perform what's called a pre-audit. That literally means they check the transactions before any payment actually takes place. They are your immediate preventative measure, stopping illicit or incorrect payments before the cash ever leaves the building.
These internal guards basically have a set of specific superpowers. Their objectives are super clear. They constantly review financial controls to make sure they're airtight. They strictly ascertain that established policies are being followed. They safeguard assets from all kinds of losses, and they appraise the quality of performance. Basically, they are the essential eyes and ears on the inside.
Section 3. The ultimate detective, Auditor General.
But what happens after the money is already spent? Now, what's really interesting here is the contrast. While the internal audit is inside performing those pre-audits to prevent errors, the Auditor General is completely external, performing post-audits. They're the ones who come in after the transactions are closed, examining the scene of the action to ensure everything was done entirely by the book.
And they perform something pretty fascinating called a value-for-money audit. Let's bust a little jargon here. A standard regularity audit just asks, did we follow the law? Simple enough. But a value-for-money audit, it asks a much bigger, much more important question: did we actually get what we paid for? It traces the root causes of inefficiencies to make absolutely sure resources were utilized in the most economical manner possible.
And they don't just guess. It's a highly systematic, step-by-step detective process. It flows from the proposal and scooping phases, where they gather their initial intelligence, right through planning and implementation, where they report the results, all the way to a final evaluation phase to actually assess their own methodology.
To handle all of this, the Auditor General's office has massive jurisdiction. It's divided into these specialized directorates. The Treasury Accounts team handles the main financial statements. State Accounts audits pay officers in various states. Public Enterprises oversees the parastatals. Pension handles pre-audits of gratuities. And they even have a specific losses and investigations unit designed solely to hunt down cases of lost funds.
But here is the catch. They're on a very strict clock. The Constitution dictates that the Auditor General has exactly 90 days after receiving the Accountant General's financial statements to submit their crucial reports to the National Assembly. That's a ticking clock designed to ensure accountability happens while the trail is still warm.
Section 4. The Tribunal, Public Accounts Committee.
So once the Auditor General submits that report, who actually reads it and takes action? Enter the Public Accounts Committee, or PAC for short. This is a legislative committee made up of members of the National Assembly, and frankly, their setup is pretty intimidating. They function essentially like a court of inquiry. Their primary purpose is to take the Auditor General's findings and expose any corruption, inefficiency, or waste by public officers who have been entrusted with taxpayer funds.
The powers they wield are immense.
The PAC has literal tribunal-like abilities to summon witnesses, demand any written or oral evidence, and, here's the kicker, require public officials to give evidence under oath. If a government department goes over budget, the PAC has the constitutional authority to bring them into the room, put them under oath, and find out exactly where that excess money went.
Section 5. The Gatekeepers. Public Procurement.
This brings us to our final layer of defense: the people and rules that control how the government actually buys goods, services, and funds massive infrastructure projects. At the heart of all this is the concept of due process. You could think of due process as the ultimate clearinghouse for all government contracts. It's the firm application of bureaucratic rules to prevent arbitrary spending, block inflated contracts, and ensure a completely transparent and competitive bidding approach.
And the enforcer of this due process? That's the Bureau of Public Procurement, or BPP. Their goals are absolutely vital. They harmonize procurement policies, establish pricing standards, ensure competitive value for money practices, and aggressively prevent fraudulent procurement. They literally maintain a national database of standard prices, which means a contractor can't just swoop in and try to sell a basic desk to the government for 10 times its actual value.
To prove you actually followed all these rules, auditors look for a very specific, literal paper trail. You can't just hand a lucrative contract to a friend in a back room. No way. You must have documented evidence of public advertisement, a detailed tender evaluation report, the official contract award letter, and tender returns. If any of those documents are missing, the watchdogs are going to immediately flag it.
Okay, so we've explored an incredibly robust system of checks and balances today. But I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. The source material points out some harsh, real-world problems. Financial statements often fall into arrears. Political instability constantly disrupts the composition of these committees. And PAC resolutions, well, sometimes they go completely unimplemented due to a lack of cooperation. It really begs the question, in the ongoing battle between perfectly designed legislative rules and flawed human implementation, who really wins? It is definitely something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.